All right, everybody. We are going to be talking about how farmers become enslaved to the government. And if you want to see what this feels like, here's a metaphor. This is our goat, Peter, who, if it were not for the 400,000 views this video has gotten on YouTube, he probably would be curry at this point. But just watch this. See if you can see what Peter's doing. Peter got his head stuck in the gate again. I think this is the fourth time. How did this happen? When did this happen? How long have you been like this? You realize that if we were tit for tat on this farm, we just leave you like this after all of the things you've done to us. Huh? Huh? I think he recognizes he's asking for mercy. What should we do, Sassy?
Come on, Pete. Pete.
Todd is battle buddy watching. This is goat fencing, but I guess we need to put up chicken wire to keep Pete from doing this again, though it is funny watching Lynn come to his rescue since Pete is probably Lynn's least favorite animal on the farm.
Stop. I almost got you out, dude.
You owe him big time. Okay, and the best part about this is that right after that happened, Peter rammed my husband. So obviously he didn't really quite understand that we were his rescuers. Okay, so Peter, if you want to see more of Peter, go to Off British Living on YouTube or subscribe to Locals, AlisonMarrow.locals.com. I'm uploading them on Rumble, but a lot of farm content coming your way because we're new farmers, and we're going to be talking to Dr. Nass today about things you should know getting into the farming business so that you can keep farming independently, selling healthy food at an affordable price to your neighbors. And I got to say, I'm going to ask her about permits because permits are one of the things that more and more I hear from independent farmers saying, do not sign the contract on a permit because you're going to be stuck letting them basically tell you essentially what chemicals you have to use to wash your food and what you have to feed your animal and how you can sell to your neighbor. And so all those things, I think, in large part have gotten us to the food system that we have in the United States, where you have a lot of money at the top that's dictating food policy for us that may not be, and it often is not, healthy for us, but they tell us it is. It's for food safety and it's to protect us and whatnot. I don't buy it. I'm going to ask Dr. Nass about it in a second. Before we go any further, though, don't forget that most of the time when you're watching my show, you're sitting there thinking, wow, I didn't know this was possible. This is terrible. I need a glass of wine to get through the rest of the show. Sometimes I need a glass of wine to get through the rest of the show. And I don't drink during the show, but I do always keep my bottle of wine here. This is one of the bottles you'll get if you join the Allison Wine Club at AllisonWinePromo.com, AllisonWinePromo.com. You get 6 bottles of wines that were selected for my palate, which is basically like, look, I clean with vinegar. I drink raw milk. I don't like to put chemicals in my body. So this is wine that was selected for stuff that I would like, very clean products. And you're going to get 6 of them every 3 months. You're not a wine drinker. You can send it off to grandma. You unfriended her over some food policy. Now you're going to hear Dr. Nass tell you that you were dumb to do that. Grandma, only 1 glass of wine. She's under the table. She forgot everything. She doesn't need a whole lot. Then this is a great product for her. Okay. Get her 1 glass. She'll never forget or never remember what you did. She'll forget. It'll be in the past. So AllisonWinePromo.com, Chile, France, Italy, Spain. None of the dyes, additives, stuff that's put in a lot of the grocery store wine, and some of them grown from vineyards that have been around for 200 years, 5 generations of farmers, hand-picked grapes, all that good stuff. AllisonWinePromo.com. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to bring in Dr. Nass. Dr. Nass, thank you for being here. I'm going to show an article that was written with your input about you here at Zero Hedge, which also you can read about or watch a video of on Dr. Nass's Substack. But this is We Become Serfs on Our Own Land, the USDA trap, foreign land sales, and the collapse of American farming. And just reading the beginning, the bold here that really stuck out to me was the system isn't broken, it's rigged. So what does that mean?
Would you like me to start?
Go for it.
All right. So farming is pretty simple, right? When we started to be a country 249 years ago, almost everybody was a farmer. And the vision of Jefferson was that this would be a country of small landowners who would grow for themselves, and have commerce amongst ourselves with no interference. Remember, we fought the British because they were taxing us, because they were interfering with our ability to buy and sell with other countries, and manage our own affairs. And as late as 1900, still 40% of Americans lived on farms. And there were, very few, if any, regulations. Everybody knew you grew your food, your neighbor knew what you were growing, knew if it was good or not. Your family ate it, you might sell it. If it wasn't good, people would stop buying from you. But of course, the government and industry got involved. So around the beginning of the 20th century, all of a sudden, we got cars and we got tractors. And then we started to get fertilizer and other inputs for farming. And so things changed. Farmers did not have to keep growing, winter crops or growing cover crops. They didn't have to compost or use manure if they didn't want to. They could start buying chemicals and using tractors and other implements. And not so many people were needed to grow and harvest the food and prepare it anymore. But the businesses that made the fertilizers, sold the seeds, made the tractors, started to thrive. And as businesses do, I mean, this is part of capitalism. Unless they are restrained, they use all sorts of practices to try to become monopolies, because that is how you make the most money, when you can control the market. So, it wasn't John Deere at the time, I forget, I think it was American Harvester, buys up all the other companies that are making tractors, and now they're it, right? So they can charge what they want. And nowadays they can tell you, you're not allowed to fix the tractor yourself. You have to come to us to fix it. We've made it so complicated. We've put in all these computers. There's nothing mechanical for you to fix anymore, and you're going to have to pay our prices. And so this happened, and around the turn of the 20th century, a lot of farmers went out of business because suddenly the inputs were high, and they couldn't. And as you know, crop prices go up and down, and the prices for livestock go up and down every year. If there's a drought, you have less animals, and so the price is higher. If the weather is wonderful and you've got lots of animals and they're fat and healthy, the price goes down. And so you may lose money no matter what the weather is. And so what farmers do is to borrow when they're growing their crop. They borrow for the seeds and the fertilizer and all the other inputs they need, pay their farm workers, who are usually seasonal. And then when they harvest their crops or sell their animals, they pay back the loans. And the U.S. government loans close to 50% of the loans that are necessary for farmers every year. But the problem is, as I said, during good years and bad years, the farmer may lose money. The farmer may be screwed because prices go down in a good year. Now, at times, the U.S. government has encouraged farmers to grow more. The weather is good, things are good, grow more, you'll make more money. But the more they grow, the lower the prices for their crops. So they lose money instead.
Can I ask you a quick question too? A neighbor of mine told me once, when she was younger, growing up, a neighbor she thinks it was corn, maybe it was wheat, it was a commodity grain in a big storage container. And she said at the time there was some kind of lack of it, and she was like, you should sell that. That would make you a lot of money because it's going for a high price. And he said, the government's paying me not to sell it right now.
Yes.
So that happens too.
Yes.
That's crazy.
There's a lot of strange things. I mean, even in World War II, the government was restricting people from selling wheat. So the government the USDA, which started in the 1800s, started around Lincoln's time, makes a lot of rules, and farmers are forced to abide by them. So a lot of farmers are being paid not to grow. A lot of farmers are being paid to grow, things, but things we aren't eating, like soy and corn that are going for animal feed, that are going for corn and soy oil, which is not the healthy, they are not the healthiest oils, and for meal. And in order to grow, get the most yields, they are using glyphosate in the case of soy. And in the case of corn, they're using both glyphosate and so corn has been genetically modified with a gene for the Bacillus thuringiensis toxin. It's a cousin of anthrax. Anthrax is a bacillus bacteria. So is BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. It makes a deadly toxin for pests. So, having been genetically engineered to produce this toxin, we now, when we eat the corn, and 95% of the corn in the United States is now genetically engineered this way, we get that toxin. And so when it's growing, it kills the pests. And then late, when farmers want to harvest it, they will often spray glyphosate on the crop or glyphosate on the wheat, even though the wheat is not genetically engineered to withstand glyphosate. They'll spray it so that all the wheat and all the corn is desiccated and is ready to be harvested at the same time, making it quicker and cheaper to harvest.
Right.
So we wind up eating glyphosate and Bacillus thuringiensis toxin from corn and glyphosate from the soy, and so do the animals. And then when we eat meat, the animals that have been fed this, you have had a lot of glyphosate, and we're getting the glyphosate from them as well. And even though the wheat is not Roundup ready, we're still getting glyphosate on it now. And some countries won't actually buy our wheat because they don't want it. But so the United States is allowed, farmers in the United States are allowed to use a number of pesticides and other products on their crops that are banned in other countries.
Right.
Also, we're allowed to use GMO crops, which, as I said, either make their own toxin or allow Roundup to be sprayed on them to kill the weeds, but not to kill the plant that we want.
You know what else I've learned as of late as a new farmer is that animal feed often has a pesticide added to it so that it can have a higher shelf life and bugs don't get in it and start eating it. Today I went to the feed store at the crack of dawn, 7:15. Thank you, Spar, for opening so early for me. And they said, hey, I said, I'm here to get some organic chicken feed. And they were like, well, we just have a couple bags left and they've got maggots in them. They told me I shouldn't say who they are. But anyway, I actually thought that was the best bag of feed I could get. So I said, sure, load me up. So instead of paying $32, they give them to me for $10 a bag, even though I should have paid extra for the extra protein because, of course, chicken love that. And it just goes to show it doesn't have a bunch of the pesticides the other chicken feed has. But I learned that with my horse because I was buying feed for my horse. And I started asking him about like some of the stuff I was seeing on the label, and because she was having some issues a few years ago, and they were like, well, they put pesticides in, like you can buy, some of this feed that like doesn't have soy or corn in it, but often with the feeds, they're still going to add a pesticide to it just to keep the bugs from getting in. And I was like, so I'm feeding my horse pesticide. So it's very hard to get away from.
Yes. And fungicide. Fungicide, keep out the fungus.
Fungicide, yeah, exactly. So yeah, you have to do a lot of research to know what's going on. But that made me think of it like when even if you're buying what you think is like, okay, it's soy, corn, feed, whatever. Well, do you know if they're just adding fungicides and pesticides to the feed just for a preservative? It's very difficult this day and age. And then, like you said, so you're a farmer and you have to buy, you usually end up paying more for the stuff that's like higher quality, or you make your own, which I do also. I also do ferment my own chicken feed. But then you go to sell them, and then people are looking at the prices like, well, I could get $2 eggs at Walmart. Why would I? And so it's difficult on the end with the consumers too, trying to get out of this whole system. Anyway, I cut you off. Continue. Sorry.
We're
going down a rabbit hole about, from I don't know, the turn of the century. And then I went in an opposite direction.
I think that you can get more for your eggs because when people taste the eggs and when they look at the color of the eggs, they realize that your chickens have eaten worms, your chickens have eaten what they're supposed to eat. and these are organic. So you should be getting, 3 times as much probably for those eggs. Just like for raw milk. I mean, the raw milk producers have to be very clean. They're not spending money to pasteurize the milk, so you'd think, well, it would be cheaper. But they have to, they don't have to be clean if they're pasteurizing it. They can have all kinds of bacteria growing it because the pasteurization process is going to kill the bacteria. You'll be eating the killed or drinking the killed bacteria. But you can get that milk fairly cheaply.
Greenpasture.org. Get your cod liver oil, your fermented cod liver butter oil. Okay, they've got all kinds of great products. Chest rubs, muscle rubs, coconut products, ghee. But this is the stuff that I've been taking for over a decade to help with dental health, especially. But it's really great for really all kinds of things. Anti-inflammation. It's got a ton of great omega-3s. It is cod liver oil that's fermented, mixed with concentrated high vitamin D butter oil, so cows on spring grasses, and mixed together. Dr. Weston Price, who was a biological dentist, turn of the 20th century, was noticing his patients had a lot of cavities. He blamed malnutrition. He studied indigenous cultures around the world who did not have dentists but did not have cavities, and he came up with the idea that basically that modern Americans were malnourished and that what they really needed was vitamins A, D. K was kind of a mystery at the time, but now we kind of know that's what he was talking about. And so when you put these two products together, you get more than if you just took the fermented cod liver oil or just the concentrated butter oil, because the vitamins and minerals in both help for your body to synergistically absorb all of it. Am I saying all this right, Dr. Nass? Am I getting it right?
Well, I hope so. I think, I'm eating a lot of butter these days, which I never did in my earlier life. But, I've heard of people getting cured by having raw milk butter and, or of course, organic. So the thing is, carcinogens and most of these pesticides, herbicides, and other, food additives that we face, or things like PFAS, which are endocrine disruptors, they are fat soluble. So if they've been used on a crop, if, for instance, if sludge, most of which has PFAS on it, has been used on the land as a fertilizer, then the food that's produced on that land is going to have PFAS. And so these chemicals, the pesticides, herbicides, endocrine disruptors, etc., are going to concentrate in the fatty parts of food. So in the butter, in the cheese, in full cream yogurt, and in meat. So those are the foods that you really want to get that are organic. You don't want any of that stuff in it, and it will reduce your risk of fertility problems, cancer, and other degenerative neurologic diseases. So I'm really big on buying all those things organic, and I haven't been using your product, but I take flax oil to get the omega-3s. I'm vegetarian, so I choose flax instead of fish oil. Fish oil is just as good, but you have to get it from clean water sources, which are harder and harder to find. So, but you need to trust the places you're getting this stuff from.
Well, you can get this stuff or anything like greenpasture.org with my promo code Allison for 10% off. So you get 10% off if you just type Allison at checkout. And I will say one thing. I used to get cavities all the time. I go to the dentist every 6 months like I was supposed to. I'd always have cavities. I started taking this, on top of the fact that I started eating a little bit better. But I really think this made the biggest difference. Like one time I went 3 years and I forgot to, I genuinely just forgot to go to the dentist. And they couldn't believe it. I had no cavities. So anyway, greenpasture.org, promo code Allison. My dad, so he helps me sell some eggs to his soccer buddies who are all Central and South American, and they were like, yeah, charge $10, these are the greatest eggs ever, they love farm fresh eggs, this is how it was in my country, they're all different colors, and they really like them. So he took some to the hospital because he's a doctor, a surgeon, and he had a fellow surgeon who he found out was eating like 3 raw eggs a day. So he's like, you should try my daughter's eggs, are organic, chickens out on pasture. So sure. So he does, oh yeah, they're really good. Well, what does she charge? And said, well, when she drives to Tampa, she charges $10 a dozen if she sells up at her house, or $8 a dozen. And he's like, well, I can get them for $3 a dozen at Walmart. And this is a surgeon. So it was just really interesting, this dynamic of like, my dad's soccer friends who probably make, 1/10 of that guy's salary were willing to pay $10 for a dozen of eggs. And his surgeon buddy who has like 3 vacation homes.
Right.
So he's a doctor, he's the one giving advice to his patients about how to how to, be healthy. And he's the one that's just like, just get the $3 eggs at Walmart. So even the medical system, as you know very well, the people that are supposed to be giving good health advice obviously do not always do that.
No, they don't teach you nutrition in the medical school at all. I studied nutrition in college. I was originally going to be a PhD in nutrition, and then I made a wise move and went to medical school instead. But doctors don't know anything about nutrition, and it's very sad. Of course, Bobby Kennedy says they're going to require the med schools to start giving classes in nutrition. So, but even most of the nutrition research is sponsored by companies that want us not to know how to feed ourselves well. So, I'm not sure how that is going to all work out.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so back to the whole serf thing. So you were talking. I think where we diverted was when you were talking about being paid, or saying, "Hey, grow more," but they're making less money, and the government says, "Okay, don't grow as much," and then they tell you to grow corn, which we're not eating. It's going to cattle that aren't supposed to be eating it, and so it just creates this. The government intervention has kind of created this system that we have now.
Yes. But when the farmer borrows from the government, or because there are various programs that will lend to farmers, or from banks, right? They are putting up their farm as collateral. So if they get several bad years, they're going to lose their farm. They're not going to be able to leave it to their children. And that's what's happening. So between 2017 and 2024, the United States lost something like 200,000 or 160,000 farms. We only have 1.9 million farms. So we lost 8% of all the farms in America went under in 7 years between 2017 and 2024. So that's a big problem. I mean, I hope you see it as a big problem, because that land then is often being taken over by the government or by the bank, and they'll sell it to whomever. Oftentimes, it's foreign buyers are buying the land, or Bill Gates is buying it, and he's doing something like burying trees in order to get carbon credits, and he thinks he's going to make money through doing these crazy things to get carbon credits, to take carbon out of the air and bury it in the ground. So anyway, that's what we're dealing with now. The average age of farmers is about 65 now. And if their farm is in hock to the banks or the government, and they can't leave it to their children are not going to become farmers, right? They can't take on all this debt to buy a farm and then find that they can't really necessarily make any money.
Yeah.
You get 2-3 bad years in a row, and you've got the Irish potato famine. You can't maintain your farm any longer. So what do farmers today do? The husband or the wife has to go out and get another job. And most of the money that for farm families comes in from that other job, and almost no money really comes in from the farm. And so that is what we are stuck with. We've had several episodes where the companies that supply farms, as I said, the tractor companies and the companies that sell the inputs, also the companies that buy from the farms, so the companies that wind up selling the meat. These companies have grown bigger. They've bought up the competition. They've monopolized, and then they can squeeze the farmer, not only by charging too much for the inputs, but not paying enough for the final product. And at the moment, there are 4 companies that control 85% of the meat processing in the United States. 2 of them are owned by nationals from other countries, and 2 are owned by Americans. Now, so they work together. They form a trust or a cartel, and they decide how much they're going to pay for an animal. So here's the farmer. He may have to ship his cows 100 or more miles to get to a place where the USDA allows him to have his meat slaughtered and processed. There are not so many of these places, because each one has to have a full-time USDA inspector. And you can be required to book your spots at these meatpacking plants up to 2 years in advance, if you can believe it. I mean, it takes 2 years to grow a cow to be ready to be processed. So as soon as you've got a newborn cow, you've got to make an appointment already to have them slaughtered.
Mhm.
And when you get there, you take the price that you're offered, right? Because otherwise you're going to have to ship those cows hundreds of miles somewhere else to another meat packer, but they're all in cahoots. They're all paying the same amount of money, so you don't have options. Now, in the old days, you didn't have to go through the USDA. You could have your neighbor slaughter your animal, or the farmer could slaughter and butcher and sell right from the farm or sell from the butcher shop. But because of the conditions in meatpacking plants in the early 1900s, the laws changed, and the requirement came in that in order to have safe meat, it had to go through USDA inspection. The thing is, now we have meatpacking factories that are so big, they may be processing 5,000 cows in a day. And so even though they have multiple USDA inspectors, they can't really inspect every cow. They can't check them before and after and make sure there's no disease. And so problems get through, contaminated meat with, listeria, meat with cancer does get through, does enter the food supply.
Is this
And the
is
meat
this
is
where they
let me just say, the meat
Yeah.
is no more safe than if the farmer was butchering and selling it from his farm, probably less safe.